Hi, everyone. As we're all returning to our main room, I want to introduce our closing speaker, Professor Maya Dimant. Maya will be helping us close out what it is that we've just experienced, bringing it all together before we have a surprise for you at the end. Maya,
Great, and thank you. Nalini, can you just remind me what's our timing? How much time do we have?
why don't you take 5 minutes on this?
Cool, great, thanks. So I'm gonna start with something that if anybody had ever told me I was gonna do in a group like 5 years ago, I would have rolled my eyes at you and been like, I'm never gonna do that, but I really think it's very important. I want us to just take 1 second, if this is safe wherever you are. As I told my group, sometimes I take calls like this in the car, so maybe not if you're in the car. But if it's safe, I want you to just take a minute and close your eyes. And I'm inviting you to close your eyes because I'm inviting you to imagine a little bit. I'm inviting you to imagine the change that we're all fighting for and hoping for and thinking about coming to fruition. Right? I'm inviting you to think about what that looks like in your building where you live, in your house or your apartment that you share, on your block, in our schools, in our government, in our public safety mechanisms, in our tax structure, in our food supply, in our courts. What is this change that you're hoping for? What is the biggest dream that you can dream? And I'm inviting you to really fight to be creative. It's not just about living together in harmony. I'm inviting you to fight for something bigger. I'm inviting you to dream of something bigger. And I'm going to bring you back and encourage you to open your eyes and start to think about what steps do we need to take to actualize that crazy creative vision. What steps do we need to actualize to get you to dream even bigger? I never believed that in my lifetime I would ever hear people talk about defunding the police. I didn't even dare to dream that big. And here we are, right? How can we encourage ourselves to dream even bigger? And with that, I want to hear a little bit from each of the facilitators about what your group saw as already changing, to give us some inspiration and excitement around this energy that we can take with us and continue to move forward with. So I'd invite the facilitators to each share a few things that their group was thinking about.
I can start us off.
Great.
So I'm Megan. We started off talking a lot about how while it's not comparative, a lot of the group members had similar experiences of being minorities, and through that gave them this empowered space to begin really educating, because they had the sensations of, I know what it feels like in my experience to have to fight for myself. I can only imagine what it feels like, for what's going on right now, and how I want to be that person that whenever somebody says something that's incorrect or doesn't have the right education, or sometimes people say things that are coming from a place of like total lack of awareness. And that's where some of the group members said, I want to be the person that's like, hey, I don't know if you know this, but I'd love to share this with you. So we really came from it like we have this understanding in some ways of what it must feel like. So, we want to provide that space to educate.
That's great. And I think that emphasizes the point of we're all learners and we're all educators, and we all sometimes take a step forward as educators. And for those of us that experience privilege in different arenas, take a step backwards as learners, right? And what does it mean to have that power, to be able to seed that power to people that have that learning in different moments? Thank you, Megan. Anyone else want to share?
I'll go next. Very similar way of what we came to our conclusions. It was about keeping the discussion ongoing. about these things that are going on, and to not, forget, because it's been forgotten over and over what what the purpose for this change that we are trying to achieve, and to do it with an open space where there's people that may feel like they aren't able to get this across to other people, but we all could do our part. It's just starts by where we are, and really just being open and allowing that perspective from all sides, but to be able to take action where it's needed.
That's great, right? Keeping the momentum going, and hopefully we'll have further conversations about how do we uphold that energy so that we don't, flame out, which is great. Other facilitators want to chime in?
Yeah, sure. I'll go next. I had a great group. I had a scientist, a social worker, 2 entrepreneurs, and one who also has a strong network of educators. And we talked about observing the way the world has changed from powerlessness to really this nervous, active position. But what next, right? The observations were that, you know what, we're not crazy. This has been validated by the world. This is global. These people in other countries who we can't even pronounce are demonstrating for the same reason as they've seen the vulnerability and the things that are not right. So we're not crazy. We're struck by the diversity where in certain cases and in certain places, the demonstrators and the voices are not people of color, and they're every age group. So it crosses and defies, all kinds of barriers. But we're also in a quandary about the about face that big business has taken. All of a sudden, they have money to do things that are human, that are life-changing, but they didn't have that in the budget before, right? And on the extreme, we're actually seeing some backlash, which was very interesting, where white business owners are saying, you know what, with all this going on, I think I'd rather put my money with my people and not kind of get to, this is a little too crazy for me. So there are extremes here, which means the landscape is wide open. And we had a commitment in the group to align, my personal beliefs and expertise with a cause. Do something, actually commit to, in this case, it was wealth and inequality, because if we can work in that space, we can fill some holes, we can fill some gaps. We're hopeful that also within our group, we talked about the movement should make us be wanting to educate, bring Black history or history of Indigenous people into curriculum, into the formative years before people go the wrong way, right? So that the learning happens when they're very young and they grow and mature into it. So we had really a lot of conversation in the group, and we had one individual who was not from this country who said, how about just being Americans first, being human? And you're all American. So it's bizarre to me that, you have this Constitution, you have the Bill of Rights, and it's hard to be American. Mm-hmm. So it was really a great group. I want to thank all of them for their contributions.
I really appreciate that. And I think, Natalie, you and your group make a ton of excellent points. I personally feel very connected to the conversation around corporations who are like, oh, we can't possibly pay our Black and brown workers of, anything above minimum wage or give them health care or anything of value that would help them move up in the world. Oh, yes, no, we have $175 billion now as an initiative. It's very frustrating, and it's very hard to know what that means and who to trust and when. And a lot of this has to, I'm on my soapbox now, but has to do with what it means to be in a capitalist society, which we could deconstruct another time. So over here with my radical values spewing out. Nalini, did you want to share what your group covered?
Sure, just a second, because I want to be mindful of time. So yeah, there was a lot of momentum towards taking action where we can. So we had an 18-year-old who said, I just signed up to vote. We had a mom sharing that she's getting involved in her school board and getting really influential there. We had a gentleman who's had 4 decades of experience in the workforce, and he's making hiring decisions and influencing others. And then we had this opportunity that was created that was, well, where's the leadership, and how do we make sure that any change is sustained, that it is not a blip, but that it is sustained. And so there's an opportunity to actually try to put our weight towards sustaining change through influencing leadership.
Great. And with that, I will turn it back over to you. Thank you, everybody.